Welcome to the PVE podcast. This is DB Smiley. Here with me today, I have a bunch of panelists. We're going to talk about MMORPG business models. So, with that, I'm just going to kind of hop right into introducing myself and introduce the topic and then the panel. So, again, I'm DB Smiley. I write guides for Star Wars The Old Republic. They're at youtube.com. And possibly writing guides for Dolphy going forward. Kind of uncertain at this point, but that may happen. Today we're going to be talking about MMORPG business models. That is how companies monetize their games and how that affects players as well as developers. So just going to go down the line of my panel today and introduce them kind of one at a time. Asmongold, go ahead.
All right, my name is Asmongold. I'm, I guess, what you would call a professional neckbeard. I make videos for World of Warcraft. Used to also make them for Diablo, but WoW is my main game. You can check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/user/ I think it's like, it's either Asmongold or another virtual exchange. It should be, like, you've got it in the video, right? Or the information about this?
I can put it in the video.
Yeah, it's just I made it a very long time ago, so I wasn't entirely sure. But yeah, I make WoW videos about pretty much all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah, I'll put it in the description for the video. Okay, and then Deltia.
Hi, I'm Deltia from deltiasgaming.com. I really appreciate you having me on today. Thanks for inviting me. I play Elder Scrolls Online all day, every day. A lot of Elder Scrolls Online. So excited to talk about that. I'm partnered with Twitch. I partner with YouTube. Run my own website. So anything on the internet, deltiasgaming.com.
Okay, and then Shinryuku.
Yeah, I'm Shinryuku. Most people call me Shin just because it's easier. I'm mostly known on Twitch. I'm Twitch streamer primarily, but I also do a little bit of YouTube stuff. I am a big proponent of Guild Wars 2. It's my MMO of choice. I'm a former and kind of current WoW player, but majority Guild Wars 2, among other things. So I play it whenever I can, but time constraints don't always allow that. So.
All right, and then finally Doc.
Hey, I'm Doc. I'm last and hopefully not least. I run a little game called, I do a podcast for a little game called WildStar Online. It's coming up on its year this month. I do a podcast called Strange Tales from Outer Space. You can find us at Twitch TV/QTimes every Sunday night at 5 p.m.
Okay, and I actually should also mention I play a little bit of WildStar, and I'm raiding not long after this podcast ends. So, assuming we beat the roster boss, that guy's been one-shotting us for a couple weeks now. So, kind of the first thing when we talk about MMO business models is we really want to define our terms. A lot of times I see terms get conflated. And so I think it'd be clear to define it. So first, when we talk about subscription models, I think generally we're talking about you pay X dollars a month to be able to play the game. So for example, Asmongold, obviously World of Warcraft is still pretty much a subscription model if you discount up to level 20. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can play up to 20 for free, and then after that, they instituted a new thing, I don't know if you want to talk about this or not, where you can, players can buy a token and then sell the token that gives people game time. Mm-hmm. But other than that, yeah, it's going to be $15 a month. I think if you buy 3 months, it's 14 or 13, but yeah, I mean, that's basically what it comes down to.
And then, we'll get into a bit more of that later, especially the idea of buying monthly subscriptions with in-game currency. Next, we're going to talk about free-to-play, and this is something that is of interest to especially Doc going forward with WildStar, since that game is going to free-to-play. But Star Wars The Old Republic has a hybrid subscription free-to-play model. And when we talk about free-to-play, the idea is, I mean, technically you could argue World of Warcraft is free-to-play, right? You could argue
if you have a lot of gold, yeah.
Well, not even a lot of gold, just up until level 20. It's complete.
If you have a lot of money, everything's free.
Yeah. Well,
I would not say that, but I can see why some people could make that assumption. And I guess if you really only want to play up to level 20, for all intents and purposes, I guess it is. You know? Right.
I mean, so that's kind of what we're going to get into free to play is it's my point isn't to say this is WoW is free to play. It's just to kind of illuminate that free-to-play is a very loaded term that often gets brushed over. So when people talk about WildStar going free-to-play, they turn around and say, well, Star Wars The Old Republic is also free-to-play. And I think we'll get into later how Star Wars The Old Republic probably doesn't fit that model the same way WildStar will. But generally,
I would say free-to-play. I would say free-to-play would be any title that doesn't require an initial purchase for the initial content you're access to.
Right.
So under that, loosely, WildStar does, or World of Warcraft does definitely fall into it.
Right.
If it doesn't require an initial purchase.
Yeah. So you just load it up, hit play, and you're in.
I
for its initial content.
I think you gotta buy the game. Pretty sure you've got to buy the game.
Well, not to do the level 20. I can say from experience because I tried it out like a couple months ago.
Yeah, I think you can download that, but if you want to actually play the full game, you do have to buy it.
Correct.
That's very true.
Yeah, you have to buy and subscribe, and that actually kind of takes us into our next term, and this will, get back to the Guild Wars 2 and ESO guys here is buy to play, which my understanding is Guild Wars 2 is buy to play, and that ESO is basically buy to play now. Is that correct?
Yeah, Guild Wars 2 is very solidly buy to play. You buy it, and it's yours, and you don't have to pay anything else.
And I think we'll get into what's emerged as I don't want to say controversy, is probably too strong a word, but with the expansion pricing. I heard some news this week that I'll ask you about later.
Man, I can't wait to get to that.
Yep. And then also for ESO.
Yeah, it's buy to play. You basically play a one-time fee to get the game. It's kind of like, and then you can subscribe and have some benefits, but the benefits aren't super important. So really, it's just a one-time fee, and that's translating well on the consoles.
Right. And then, and very shortly, I think we'll get into talking about what happens when game business models transition, as has happened already in 2 of the games here, and certain with Doc, it's coming up this fall with WildStar. So, one of the terms, though, that often comes up with free-to-play, and to some extent buy-to-play, but mainly it's a free-to-play idea, is the idea of pay-to-win. And I often hear this term thrown around pretty much whenever anyone wants to complain about something without it necessarily being apropos. So I think let's just give an example of what pay-to-win could be, if anyone wants to just chime in, with something that is borderline pay-to-win in their games, if they're aware of it.
I guess I can throw one in. This is one of those topics for the Guild Wars 2 community where a lot of people disagree that it's pay-to-win, but someone will always pop in and say, oh, it's totally pay-to-win. In the gem shop, which is, I did say that once you buy the game, you don't have to pay anything else, but there is an optional microtransaction shop in Guild Wars 2, and one of the items you can purchase through that shop is you can purchase these boosters. And I should mention that you can also purchase these things with in-game gold. That's another aspect of their model. But going from a real money perspective, you can purchase these boosters that a lot of them will just increase like how much gold you get from monsters or what your magic find stat is, or things that don't really affect combat. Mm-hmm. But there are a few in there that will improve your stats. Not by a lot. I think they do a maximum of like 30, which is not a whole lot. It's not all that noticeable in the game. But it is a slight stat boost, and you can do it for, I believe, your main damage stat, your main defense stat, stuff like that. And there are people who believe this is pay to win. The thing is, these boosters are A, temporary, and B, they don't affect the competitive part of the game, the PvP mode where stats are the most meaningful and where they need to be balanced the most. These boosters cannot be used in there, and it's really only used in PVE, where the balance is not really that big a deal, and in World versus World, which isn't really balanced on an individual player case. So you can technically throw the argument that it is, but at the same time, in the place where it really applies, it can't be used, so it doesn't really affect things.
If I may ask, does it affect endgame PVE content?
That yes and no. I mean, there are various scaling things. I mean, the endgame PVE content is a whole different barrel of fish for the Guild Wars 2 community.
Right.
there isn't really anything currently in the game like rating where that stuff really matters per se. And even then, the boosts are so insignificant compared to a number of the other in-game boosts that you can get that it's not, people won't really care one way or the other. At least the people who are doing the content where they are focusing on min-maxing, those people don't really, they're not forcing people to buy boosters or anything.
Well, let me just throw out an example, and this is often something I hear in the Star Wars The Old Republic community, and it may draw some laughs, but I have seen it said by people in the forums for The Old Republic that because they limit for non-subscribers, so if you're free to play, you can only do X Warzones a week. I believe it's 3. And although you can group with subscribing members and do unlimited. And I've heard that referred to as pay to win because it's time gating content for non-subscribers and giving subscribers an advantage. I hear the same argument regarding PVE because content is gated in the Old Republic. Now, would anyone here argue that that is in fact pay to win?
Well, I think that. Yeah, I think what you have to do is define what you really mean by winning, and then it becomes a lot easier. For in WoW, like there are a lot of like cosmetic items that some people consider are still pay to win because some people have an end game or their goal in the game is to collect all of these mounts or all of these pets, and so whenever some of the mounts or pets are in a store, then they would consider that paying to win the mini game or their end game of collecting all the mounts or all the pets. In terms of the other stuff, like I don't really know. Like the war zones are like raids, right? In WoW, like kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think that it would entirely be pay to win, but it's not. It does give you an advantage, does it? Or doesn't it give you an advantage?
You could probably argue that the
no,
more
sorry.
time you spend...
I should clarify. War zones are battlegrounds. War zones are
Oh.
PvP, and raids in Star Wars are called operations. But I generally
I
try
see,
to use the
okay.
word raid, but war zones just kind of been embedded in my mind. So I'll let you kind of go back to that.
I got it. So those things, like, so that's something that new players can't do that actual players can do.
Correct.
Basically.
Non-subscribers can only do 3 a week unless they group with a subscriber, and then they can do unlimited while they're grouped.
I mean, personally, that doesn't really seem like pay to win, but if you want to use, like, I guess, like a dictionary definition or how somebody could define it, it is an advantage to the subscriber gets by paying money to the game. I mean, so if you want to use that, I guess, like that strict definition, then I guess it would become pay to win, right?
Yeah, so I'm not even necessarily trying to get at, like, let's define the term and all the community has to fall in line. I'm more arguing that I think pay to win is kind of a hard term to define, and so many people throw so many different things out that I don't think, kind of doing some research for this podcast, that anything really in any of these games could strongly qualify as pay to win from a standpoint of PvE or PvP. But you know, not everyone, I guess, views the same. It's a very good point you made about not everyone views Endgame the same. Doc, you want to chime in, I think? Or
I was basically going to say the same thing. Pay-to-win content, at least in my description, would be anything that would give you a distinct power advantage over another player. So in that regard, players with Warzone restrictions would say it's pay-to-win because these subscribers have the ability to go into unlimited war zones. They have the ability to collect unlimited amount of currency for war zones, and then in turn buy and purchase some more gear. So I could kind of see the argument there. I'm not a big fan of that argument. I simply think that you can bypass it super easy by playing with a subscribed player, which actually reinforces the social aspect of Star Wars. So if you can play with people that have unlimited access to the game, you get to make a few friends or a few enemies along the way, and by then you're actually more tempted to see, like, I really want to invest my time in this. I'm going to then go and get a subscription somehow for the month.
Right. So before we move on to the next, does anyone else have anything to kind of chime in about defining our terms, or even if they can be defined?
Yeah, I wanted to say, like, I think everybody kind of defines pay to win differently, and so it's really kind of hard to say, like, what really is pay to win. I think it's like one of those things where everybody's interpretation is a little bit different, and so for what might be pay to win for me might not be pay to win for you, and vice versa.
With some little technicality that someone pulls in.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it just defined it. I think it comes down to how you define winning, really, and so yeah, it's really kind of what it is for me.
And I want to stress that was a great point you made. That for some people, winning the game is very different than these traditional ideas of rating or PvP. So I'm gonna kind of skip over the next bit in the outline I went over with you guys. Just move kind of into Q&A, which is, we want to talk about with the subscription model. So this is, I think every game here except Guild Wars 2 has tried for the subscription model. Correct me if I'm wrong on Guild Wars 2 if they've ever tried it.
Nope, they have not.
Okay, so every game has at least tried a subscription model. I know ESO has as well, and I think one of the recent trends we're seeing is, in the case of 3 of our 4 games, the subscription model is either not there or is changing dramatically soon. So one of the trends I think we've seen is a game starts a subscription model, and then it becomes a free-to-play, either hybrid or just outright free-to-play. What do you guys take away from that? I mean, obviously we have the World of Warcraft guy here whose game is still subscription model. I think that's just because of its large population. Why is every game, though, starting with subscription model when the field is just littered with the fallen bodies of subscription MMOs?
Because games want to be World of Warcraft, not like some weird game that you read on Steam that has like 300 players. Like everybody, I think that WoW is kind of defined like the MMO, like what it means to be a successful MMO. And so one of the things that WoW does, every other MMO that comes out tries to emulate or replicate those different things in their game. Like you saw that a lot with WildStar, with them trying to emulate the vanilla World of Warcraft, and also a little bit with Star Wars. I think that was kind of a while ago, so I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, and Star Wars: The Old Republic is still, even though technically it's free to play, pretty much all in-game content is subscription gated to some extent. Doc, you were wanting to chime in?
Yeah, I talk a lot, so apologies, and break me off whenever you can.
No, feel free to jump in whenever.
So my opinion with Star Wars, with ESO, and with WildStar, and a bunch of other games that have since either folded or transitioned to a different model is you have to it's not just for the players. Initially they say, hey, we can go subscription because we have to put money in our pockets. We sunk time, effort, and money, if we're looking at it just logically, into this game, and we don't even know if we go free to play out the bat that we're going to recuperate any of it. The hope is that people will see the quality of this game and will become loyal to it and will continue to pay the subscription. It's not as clear-cut evil, just give me all your money now.
Right.
After a while, it's either the game and its flaws become very noticeable for a lot of players and they leave, or another game comes out that catches their eye more, or simply we have the burden of choice, which is so many games nowadays, the player can take their time elsewhere. And the MMO genre is a very time-intensive game. They realize, hey, we're losing players, we're not pulling in the money we want to, what are some options? And for a lot of them, free-to-play, buy-to-play hybrids are a great option because it allows players to keep their brand loyalty, but also bring in returning and new players into the fold and see what the game is about and keep their servers open.
I think that that's a really good point that you have about recouping the costs, because a subscription model, it's like if you've got 500 subscribers and each one is paying $10, you know exactly how much money you're going to get. And it's a much more defined and linear path of, I guess, like generating income, whereas like free to play, you've got the people who spend like $500 a week on, this free to play game, and you got the other people who've never spent a single cent. And, there's a lot more variation and a lot more probability or possibility, actually, that you might not really be able to make your recoup your costs, as you were saying, with development and everything else.
And we got to keep these people paid, really. The more that we keep them paid with subscription or free-to-play and a steady free-to-play, the more content they can produce.
So, Shin or Delty, either of you want to jump in here and say anything?
Well, regarding, free-to-play, it's a business, right? Everyone thinks it's hee-hee-ha, fun video games. Like, I make my living covering ESO, and people get mad because I have a sub-only guild. It's a business. At the end of the day, it's to make money, and it's no secret. Regarding pay-to-win, almost every game has some aspect of pay-to-win, in my opinion. You pay for XP potions that enhance your character. Well, you're paying for something that enhances your character. That, by my definition, is pay-to-win. But it's a business, and games, almost all of them have some aspect of this now, just because it's too profitable not to. It's too profitable not to get people in and go, hey, you're out of ammo, buy it for $1. You're going to do it. I've done it. I've spent tons and tons of money on crowns, upgrading my horses, and doing just random little things. It's 2015, and games have evolved. They want you to get you in, get you excited. You blow $100, you never touch the game again, they just won. And that's why it's successful.
Well, I mean, we'll get more into free-to-play transactions later. For now, I kind of want to just focus it on, the subscription model, and I think some great points were raised about how subscription model does lead to a more predictable income stream. I mean, you just look online, it's not even video games anymore. Everything's going to subscription model. There's Netflix, Google Play. I subscribe so I can listen to whatever music I want. I probably don't even listen to, for $10 a month, $120 worth of new music in a year anymore. I'm getting to that age in my life where I'm just like, no, I like my old shit, and I'm just going to keep it here. And so I think, subscriptions lead to a convenience with services, and I think games try to capitalize on that. However, oftentimes, as we said, when you have a subscription model, fewer people are going to play your game than you would if you didn't have it. And the question is, where do you draw that line? So, I think we'll get more into that later as the conversation goes. One of the new things that's arising are subscription tokens that are tradable in games. So WildStar had this with Cred. It's the first example I'm aware of. Feel free to interrupt me.
Eve actually introduced it first.
Yeah, I was going to say Eve did it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then WoW has just added it very recently, I believe, correct?
Yes, they have.
I should probably jump in here. Guild Wars 2 from the start has had something very similar. I mentioned this earlier, and this is also tying into the whole reason why people kind of discount the whole pay-to-win thing with the boosters. You can pay with anything in the microtransaction shop with in-game currency. You do not have to spend a dime on the game and still be able to purchase, for quote, anything in that shop. So Guild Wars 2 has, in a sense, kind of had something similar that allows players to circumvent paying real money for any of the microtransaction stuff.
And then I know Star Wars: The Republic, how I talked about with their subscription model, content's gated, but you can buy a la carte just individual unlocks. So you can buy like an operations pass for a week. So you can do operations, which are, again, just raids. You can buy an unlimited war zones. But then you can only buy that on the in-game like auction house. So someone has to pay real money for that at some point. Is that the same in Guild Wars where someone has to pay real money for it at some point? Or is it just available with in-game currency?
It's available with either real money or in-game currency anytime for anyone. And it's you have that option all the time. Okay. You do not have to spend a single dime.
Okay. So I think now this next bit will be kind of just for the people in the fallen MMOs, which is kind of getting into why did your subscription game fail? And for now we're gonna have to definitely count WildStar among that. They are going free to play hybrid.
I agree.
So why did it fail? And just I try to kind of briefly sum up what you think the main reason is. So I'll kind of start with Star Wars: The Old Republic. I think the main reason the game failed was, first off, it tried to be like a kind of hybrid story, single player MMO, and traditional MMO, similar to WoW in a lot of respects. But I think one of the things it ran into was endgame content wasn't up, because their idea when they created the game was, well, there are 8 storylines in the game, so someone's going to level a character to level 50, and then they're going to think, oh boy, I want to do that again, and they'll start a new character and try to level it to 50, doing a different storyline. The problem is the storyline makes up about 1/5 of your leveling, and the other 80% is, kill X stormtroopers on Tatooine. So I think that was why a lot of people got turned off to Star Wars, because there just wasn't that endgame content. It's still doing very well. It's actually, subscription-wise, the game's still doing well. The new expansion is, at least for now, said to only be for subscribers. So we'll kind of see how that changes when more details are revealed. The expansion coming out this fall. But Anyone else chime in?
Yeah, sure. I'll go next. So, like I said, WildStar. As to where it failed, there's a few things. Some are my opinions, some are kind of widely accepted. One of them was lack of in-game testing during the beta process. I remember playing the closed beta, and they said, "Hey, we're coming out June 3rd. Hey, you're going to be able to test pretty much level 50 content and raid content for about 2 weeks." Where the entire raiding community went, "No, don't do that. We don't know how broken it is yet." The people trying to level through the content were like, "Hey, I haven't even gotten there. Don't do that." Oh well, game launched anyway. There were other optimization issues, most of which have been cleared up. What happened was just there was a bunch of aspiration and ambition for WildStar. Most of it hit the mark, but those that be very obvious. One of which being war zones, which were war plots. I apologize, which were 40v40. There was no content to promote it in game. No one knew how to access it, and when they did, it was very hard to access it. There were issues with the leveling process where everything would just kind of drop you off somewhere and you had no clue where to go. We already had endgame issues, and there's a very strong mentality. There were two big mottos that WildStar had during its ramp up to launch. One was play how you want to. The one that got echoed by the community and then echo chambered back by Carbine was a throwaway line about being hardcore. And then they went, "Oh, the community loves the hardcore part. Let's just go balls out on hardcore. So we're going to go hard. This is for the hardcore gamer. 40-man raids, it's getting even bigger now because of hardcore. 40-man versus 40-man war plots, even more hardcore because of that." And quickly, a few months afterwards, everyone went, "This is a little too old school for our taste. We kind of want to spend our time more effectively." And so it just kept going, and the mentality kind of ate itself.
Yeah, and I remember the joke was the first boss of Datascape, the second raid in the game, wasn't System Daemons, it was the roster boss. And it one-shot many guilds.
Very much so. Very much so. It also didn't help that we still have, I should say, a very hard old school mentality, which I think we should really revisit in attunement, because the attunement is very grindy. It's very... Some of it's necessary, some of it's unnecessary. It needs to be looked at. There's some old school design processes that were kept, which need to be re-looked at, personally.
Right. And then, Deltia, you want to?
Sure. ESO, Elder Scrolls Online, why did it go to subscription, or why did it get rid of subscription? Well, first of all, it should not have launched with a subscription. I think what most people were expecting was Skyrim with friends, and the game tried to be an MMO first, then it tried to be Skyrim with friends, then it's trying to be an MMO again. When they should have released it with the console version and the PC at the same time, I would have liked to see them just keep it for a year and have it all at once, buy to play like it should have been. But they rushed it, and the PC players basically, no offense, got to test the game for a year. And it's wonderful on consoles. And the transition, making it buy to play, is fantastic for the game and its longevity. But at the beginning, people just wanted Skyrim with friends. And the game didn't know what it was. It didn't know if it was a true MMO. It didn't have dailies yet. It had questing, and it just didn't know what it was. It didn't have an identity yet. And I think they always had the idea, the mindset they were going to transition it to buy to play. And I think that was just a way to get some money, revenue in, and update the game and move on. But I could be 100% wrong with that.
No, it's we're obviously throwing predictions here. I did the same with Star Wars. Render in the chat made a good point, although I won't use his exact language, but he's pointing out that there's a difference between being hardcore and grinding, and actually that's kind of a preview for the next podcast. The episode 2 is going to be on leveling and grinding in MMORPGs and whether or not that is an outdated concept, but I'll save that conversation for a completely different day.
I love grinding.
Yeah. I love grinding too. I'm a mad love it.
I think grinding has a purpose, but when it's grinding for the sake of grinding, like whenever something in the game rewards, I guess what you would say, monotony, I think that at that point it should be reevaluated and probably changed. And I think that that's one of the things that happened with my understanding. Like I haven't really played WildStar, but I've heard a lot about it and everything. Is that what WildStar really tried to emulate was like the vanilla WoW community and like just like the atmosphere where like things were very, very difficult. And I think like one thing always is whenever you try and create something that is I guess like supposed to be derivative or in a response to something else, it's really kind of hard to create your own brand and your own name and, you know, move out of that. But also on top of that, a lot of the attunements that I read about, they basically were complex and hard just for the sake of being hard. A lot of the WoW attunements had, I guess, like a lot of reasoning to them, like within the quests, and you had to do other parts of the game in order to, I guess, like advance your character and move into the raids. Whereas in WildStar, I think you had to run like a heroic a bunch of times. Is that right?
No, all you gotta do is complete it at a certain level. Actually, at this point, it's the lowest level. Before it used to be the second highest, which was just bronze, silver, gold.
Right.
Now it's bronze, used to be silver. I would say, though, on the counter argument was, all you gotta do is on your personal level to attune for WildStar rating. I remember back in the day in Burning Crusade and Vanilla, where every single person of the raid had to have a specific key, and it doesn't matter in WildStar what you're done, you're done. And WoW, you could be done, but then you forgot to get the key. So let's go back to it.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of get off that topic here, just because that's that's kind of more a preview for the next discussion, and I'll be looking for panel members for that. Obviously, panel members here would be welcome to that, but I'm also going to try to get some people from different games. I've seen Rift mentioned, EverQuest. So, but again, another topic, another day. So, moving on to. So we kind of talked about a bit of why these games failed. So then the follow-up is, does that mean starting as a subscription model is risky? Is it asking for trouble? Obviously, we mentioned earlier that starting a subscription model can reduce the initial development cost, or not reduce it, but kind of help offset the initial development cost. So my question then is, should future games really be trying to be a subscription model, or should they plan for maybe a subscription hybrid or a straight free-to-play model out of the gate, or buy-to-play out of the gate?
I think there might be a stigma associated with subscription models nowadays, especially after all of the things that have happened with WoW and all of the other games that have tried going subscription and then falling to the wayside and changing their model. That's not to say there aren't people or there aren't games that are subscription and yet they don't have that stigma with them necessarily. If you look at Final Fantasy XIV, they're still solidly sub, and they are doing perfectly fine.
I would say it doesn't hurt to go into sub, to start off as sub. There's a few things that the team should probably look into, though. If your core model of the game is just to, for lack of a better phrase, a quick cash grab, just basically say, here it is, and then we're going to keep adding stuff and adding stuff and adding stuff that you can buy for a shop later, never start out as a sub. If you believe that the time and content spent and the feedback from a community is strong enough where it's like, yeah, no, this is something that we can go and start off with, like ESO had that intention, and so did WildStar, and so did Star Wars, I think the sub option is still viable in this day and age. There's a stigma not only with what you were just saying, but players always feel nowadays, especially with large multiplayer games, that it should just be free to access no matter what. I think that's one of the bigger issues, is that players feel like with the rise of early access, with the rise of the MOBA genre being phenomenally successful as it is, they're almost all of them free, they look at MMOs and go, you're an old dinosaur, why don't you adapt or die? I'm not playing your damn game until you make it free right out the gate, because then I want to play it, and then I'll gather my opinion based off of that.
So one of the concerns then you have with the subscription model is, and typically with subscription games, you also have to buy the game itself, as you definitely did with WildStar, as you definitely did with WoW, as you definitely did with Star Wars: The Old Republic. Elder Scrolls, I assume you had to buy it, right?
Yeah, you had to. You had to buy it.
And so we're looking at basically, for the first month, let's say you get the extra game time, but then if you want to play for 2 months, you've now paid $75 for the game, and going for with a $15 subscription. So I do think that when you put that high a price tag on starting, when MMOs are largely social, you're limiting your player base, and I think there's something to be said for trying to start the game out with enough bodies to get people interested. Because if the world empties out, like in WildStar, the game, because they had so many servers, it emptied out. I mean, there were dead servers.
They overestimated. Overestimated big time. They started off with a handful of servers. At launch, reaction was so huge, they added too many servers, and then they ended up cutting a ton of servers.
And
So
they
it went
did that
both
in Star
extremes for
Wars: The
them.
Old Republic, where there was one server who the largest population on Fleet, which is kind of the central hub ever for Imperial side, was 50 people, and that was like after launch, and then there was down to 3. That was my server. Anyway, so okay, so we kind of talked about. Anyone else want to chime in on whether or not a game should start as a subscription model, or if they should try to
Well,
embrace the new age?
Well, I have something to say. It's honestly, we don't know. I mean, we don't know the data behind it and the monetary benefit of doing that, because obviously there's a reason people are doing that, coming out with the first year and then moving on. And I think that's to get a steady cash flow, recoup some of the investment that they made, and then try to get the players that, will just come into their game briefly. But with that being said, it's speculation, and it would be interesting to see the math behind it and why companies do that. I mean, Elder Scrolls had to have known they're going buy to play. So there must have been a reason they did it for a year.
Right. Could it be just because, and I say this and it might sound bad, but just because they could get away with it? Is that possibly a reason for that decision? They knew that people would subscribe for a bit, and so just to make that money while they could, make hay while the sun's shining.
That same principle, actually, I was going to say, that same principle applies to the whole pre-order business with Guild Wars 2, but that's later.
Right. Anyone else on that topic, or
about what was it? Like, I'm not entirely sure. What the topic would be.
Is it possible that because as Deltia mentioned, it seemed a bizarre decision because of kind of what they were trying to do with the Elder Scrolls Online MMO. It seems a bizarre decision that they started with subscription model when it was, I think, believed, at least by many people, that it wouldn't be sustainable, given that the market was so flooded. And so a lot of people, I think what he said was a lot of people assumed it would go buy to play. So do you think that it possibly started as a full subscription model just to capitalize on the people who would subscribe? And maybe they thought they would make more money from that than they would from just people buying the game.
Well, there's a lot of people from each, like, a different, I don't know, like, type of game, like in WoW. Like, if WoW made, like, I don't know, like, Warcraft 4, there would be a lot of people who would buy that on the first day. And I think it's the same with, like, Bethesda, I think that's how to pronounce it, with making the Elder Scrolls. And so there are a lot of people who, it doesn't really matter how much it's going to be, they're going to buy that game the day it comes out. And so if they have to pay an extra $15, it won't matter. And there are so many of them that are going to want to do that on day one that I think that it's more or less just to try and make money, because a lot of these, I guess, like, game developers, well, all of them, they're businesses. That's why they exist, is to create income. And so, if you have an option to create this much more income with, having subscription model, then they're probably going to do it, especially at the beginning when you have mostly loyal and, customers that already knew about the game before it came out.
Okay. I mean, so any other? I think that was raised some great points. Are there any other questions there? Okay.
I'm good.
So, and I think it is a great point that you can kind of capitalize on the pre-order excitement that, in a sense. So,
can that be a topic for another week?
Well, do you want to talk about the Guild Wars 2 thing or not?
Or whether or not to pre-order a given MMO, that would be an interesting discussion. That could be a topic. So kind of moving on to, ESO, Star Wars: The Old Republic, and soon WildStar are moving to a hybrid subscription model. And really the question is, okay, why would you subscribe? What is because they're going to have a subscription model and have free to play, why would you pay extra to get something, or why would you subscribe when other people can play for free? So I'm going to just kind of go down the hybrid model games, including WildStar, since it's been so detailed in lining out what's going to happen, like why you would subscribe. So in Star Wars: The Old Republic, they made free to play really the 0 to 50 leveling, and that was in effect the story mode of the game. However, when you don't subscribe, you get a ton of limitations, some of which even I as a subscriber say are just too restrictive. For example, you can only have 2 action bars in your UI if you're free to play, which is 24 hotkeys, and the Old Republic is a very hotkey intensive game. So like I use 36 when I'm raiding, by comparison. So that's one thing I've seen, but mainly the main difference between free to play and subscription is content gating. I talked a little bit earlier about how Warzones, you're limited to 3 a week if you don't subscribe, if you're free to play. Flashpoints, which are the equivalent of dungeons, they're 4-man groups. You're limited to 3, although those aren't super popular in the Old Republic anyway. And then you have operations are completely blocked off to free to play. You can't even go if you're in a group with someone who is a subscriber for operations. So that's actually the main reason I'm still paying $15 a month is because of operations. I tend to be a PVE player. So now going into ESO, Deltia, why don't you kind of tell us the difference between, I believe there's a signature edition or something you subscribe for, correct?
Well, there's Tamriel Unlimited, and this, I mean, I love the game. I'm a fanboy. I'll defend it to the end, but the subscription model is not, it's not really that worth it, honestly. There's crowns, which is like, SOTOR's cartel market, and you basically get as much crowns back as it costs for $15 to sub. So, it costs, let's say, 100 crowns, $1 is 100 crowns, you get like 1,500. So it basically pays for itself. The real important part is you get 10% experience, and in this game, your progression isn't tied to a specific character, it's overall your account. Once you reach the end game section of the game, you start accumulating these things called champion points. So what I'm trying to say here is the main incentive to sub is 10% more XP. And that applies to your overall account gaining an advantage. And that's the real reason people subscribe, like me. So
that then assumes, though, that... So what can you buy with these crowns? Is it similar to Cartel Market where it's primarily cosmetics?
Correct, but something just came out last week, super controversial, is XP potions. And that boosts your experience by 50%. And I tested that out. That does apply to... champion points, which is your overall character progression. Mm-hmm. So it is pay to win in some aspects, but you can get it in the game as well. And it's very easy to obtain in the game without using currency, without using anything. It's just an option. So with that being said, ESO has gone a little bit by pay to win. It honestly has. But I don't know. It's just my thing is, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so one of the things inherent with getting these, crowns every month is that you're going to use them. So you, as a player of ESO, I think you said you subscribe.
Yep.
Okay. Do you actually use those crowns regularly?
I blow through crowns left, right, and center. There's so many things that are useful with them. Okay. And like, for instance, horse speed. So if you start your game and you got your horse is tied to your character, not to your account, you can make it max speed one day. Spend $100, boom, max speed. That makes the game so much more enjoyable leveling. So people blow through crowns like nobody's business.
So overall, would you say that at least a player like you gets the $15 value a month out of it?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I just answered my own question. I feel the same thing with Star Wars: The Old Republic. And that brings me to WildStar, and I think we might hear a little bit of difference here, but I don't know your opinion on it, Doc. Because I play WildStar, I have a little bit of my own. But why don't you kind of tell us what the difference is once it goes free-to-play, what they've said between subscriber and free-to-play?
So first and foremost, we're not complete on all the information. Anything can change without notice. Right. So I just want to put that out there that if you're listening to this in the future and what you're looking at is quite different, don't blame me. The best way I can put it is the moment the game goes free to play, everything we have access to currently as a live subscriber just gets flipped the switch and now it's available for free. Everything. There's no gate on content. There's no gate on access to content. Everything currently in the game is absolutely 100% free for free-to-play players. You can go anywhere. You can kill anything. You can join up anywhere. That's the gist of it for free-to-play. For signature status, which is what you're calling subscribers, you get a few benefits. The TLDR for it is basically signature members convenience boosts for everybody. Literally, some of them sound a little sketchy. Some people have complained about the customer support priority, which if you look at every other game that has a hybrid model, they all have customer support priority for anybody that has some kind of subscription for it.
If I may interrupt there, just to define the term for anyone listening who's not sure, customer support priority, the idea is it's first come, first serve, but you get put in a special line if you're a paying member, and that line would presumably be shorter and would be serviced faster. So go ahead and
If you were at E3 this week, that was not the case. There was a VIP line that was as long, if not longer, than the regular line. There were a few other sketchy ones. Crafting, we have a coordinate-based crafting system for some of it, and a circuit board-style crafting. They gave you an extra percentage increase. Now, it wasn't saying it was ever successful. It's just basically a 10%, 15% increase. You could still fail it completely.
Right.
Anything that they've given you as a convenience boost in WildStar is never 100% guaranteed. It's a percent chance increase. There's a few other ones people will say, well, you have more rest XP than you can get with signature status, or you can get more reputation boosts from that. To which I then say, if you look at what you do in the free-to-play live right now, I'm going to put them together free-to-play live because they'll be exactly the same. You actually can get up to a 20% XP boost by looking at settler buffs, by looking at
guild bonuses.
What's it called? Guild bonuses, by looking at arrested XP, by looking at the authenticator eye patch. So what's really going on is the only true for certain 100% bonus you're getting is to cash generation, to arrested XP, XP boost, and reputation XP. Everything else is a percent increase, but it's never guaranteed 100%.
And also, they're going to have, I believe, an in-game currency called loyalty points, which you can buy some of those convenience options a la carte. Am I correct in that?
Not only that, and this is where I think this is absurd, they have 3 new currencies coming into the game come free to play.
And
so
the
the
game
first one you
already
just
has
mentioned,
about 4,000 currencies, just for those
pretty
who
much.
aren't familiar with WildStar.
Oh my god, so many currencies. Guys, please, can we look at the currencies? Anyway, I'll make that fast. There is the NC Coin cash shop. You can actually pay with NC Coin, so you actually throw your money at NC Soft and say, give me NC Coin. You gain loyalty points for every month you've been subscribed as a signature status person, whatever box model you bought, or how long you've retained your signature status. That's a never deteriorating source of currency that's just outside of the game, basically saying, hey, you've been playing with us for a while. Here's something pretty cool. And the third piece that a lot of people are actually forgetting is a currency called Omnibits. Now, Omnibits are your ability to access the game 100% free and bypass all monetary pull out your wallet things. As you kill stuff, as you complete quests, as you do milestones, there could be more or less depending on the game transitions. You will gather Omnibits. That can be used in the cash shop. That can be used to gather cred. That can be used to pay for your signature status.
Right.
So you literally can play this game 100% free by putting in the time.
And that's all content, raids, battlegrounds. I know one of the things is war plots. That's pretty much the only content game I'm aware of is war plots. You can't host a war plot. Is that correct?
You cannot, exactly. You cannot host a war plot. You cannot create a guild. You cannot create a circle.
Yeah,
you can participate.
Yeah. So one kind of thing I want to ask about, though, is, so there's a lot of convenience options. By the way, also, people who are free to play but bought the box, they're still going to get, if they bought the game when it was $60 or $20 now, I think it is.
$5 now in some cases.
Yeah. You still get the same character slots as you would otherwise free to play. You're only going to have 2.
Exactly.
But here's really kind of the same question I asked the other 2, and this is where I think we might see some disagreement. Are the convenience options worth $15 a month to you? Because they said it's going to be the same price, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, they're not changing the price. So $20 if you buy cred and sell it, or $15 if you keep your signature status, or if you get the Omnibits for it. I'd say if you're getting the Omnibits and paying for it, hell yeah, it's worth every little bit of money you put into that time, and you get it.
Well, I'm saying like raw currency, you give them your credit card.
Yeah, you give them the credit card. I'm biased. I do a podcast on it, and I really do like the game. I enjoy all the games in this list, but I just play WildStar the most. I would personally say it's worth it. I have a brother who's like, no, I'm not going to pay a damn cent for this game. I'm going to wait till we're free to play. None of this is worth it to me. So even in my own family, we're really legitimately split on this.
Okay. And then, Mike, well, that begs another question. Is it, should you subscribe to a game just because you think you want the game to do well?
Yes.
So you would say yes. Would anyone disagree there? Like,
I don't
if you
think it
don't
would
use the
hurt.
benefits. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone?
I think that our team needs to get paid. I think that producer needs to keep his house. I think if you have the ability to pay and you enjoy the game greatly, I'm not saying
Yeah.
spend all the money you can, but put in a
So-
little bit of.
Yeah, here's where I'm going to be a little bit of a contrarian, and I'm going to say if Star Wars: The Old Republic came out tomorrow and said operations no longer require a subscription, I would no longer be a subscriber.
Interesting.
And the reason for that is the rest of the game to me is lacking, and operations are the main thing I play, and I see it more as an economic decision. But at the same time, like I don't disagree with the notion that if you want the game to get out content quickly, and we'll discuss a little bit more of that later, you should be expecting to give it money, because otherwise, if it's not making money, you're not going to get content. There's one more question I wanted to kind of ask, and it's so on that note, so mostly it seems that games are going to make up the losses of subscription model by in-game transactions. And a lot of them are convenience-based, as we talked about ESO with faster horses. WildStar, you'll get more buy and sell slots on the auction house, more character slots. The question is, I mean, do you, with these cosmetic options, I'm losing the question in my mind here, and forgive me. With these cosmetic options, are we seeing something that's really healthy? Because people are buying goods that don't exist.
No, I do not like it at all. As I said, I liked in WoW, like one thing I really liked about the subscription model is that back in the day, you pay $15 a month and you are on the exact same playing field as every single other person. Of course you can buy gold, of course you can, pay people, but you basically are given the same options and the same opportunities as everybody else. I think that more and more we're seeing in the gaming industry where people have to pay money in order to be taken seriously. Like you have to now, like with the other game, say what?
Okay, anyone else want to... Oh, sorry.
No.
You're still going. Someone in the background. Yeah, go ahead, man.
Okay.
Go for it.
I think in the last like 5 years or so, like gaming, like the gaming industry has moved so much towards treating, their users like customers and moved away from treating them like players. And they've been looking at every single individual as like a dollar sign. How much money can I get out of this guy? And so we're going to have this person pay. You have to pay for priority service. And for whatever reason, man, like I'll be real, I don't really like that because I mean, like everybody is a paying subscriber, and so like then you have to pay to be fast tracked in the lane, and then it creates like this paradigm where it's actually better for the company to be a little bit slower at servicing non-paying customers because that would, I guess, like make them want to subscribe. I mean, it seems logical that they would do that.
Why? What gives you an inherent right on God's green earth to get something for free?
No one's asking for it for free. Who's
no,
asking?
People ask for games. They almost always want the game to be free to play, and it's like
people steal things all the time. I mean, like, and people want things to be free all the time, and that is the game developers. It's their prerogative to do that. And some game developers do make it. You can play this game pretty much for free. Like, there's all kinds of Flash games that you can play for free. But of course, if you're going to develop, put a lot of time into this, you kind of have to recoup your costs. And I understand that, but I think that there are more and less ethical ways of doing that. And in my opinion, I don't really think that things that increase the way that you're treated by the developer are a good way and an ethical way of doing that, because it creates a basically the worst kind of that they treat the people who don't pay. It creates in a way an incentive to pay, and so it's in their best interest. Well, yes, I understand it's a business, but we're all playing games, and I think that's what I say. In the last like 5 years, think about how many games have come out with completely botched releases, and I think the biggest reason for that is game developers incentivizing pre-orders so they can lock down a sale. And I mean, do you really think that that's an ethical and that that's actually helped? Who does that really help? Do you think that it helps the player, or do you think that helps the developer?
It helps the business, but ultimately it's for money. I mean, if Donald Trump walks into a restaurant and you walk into the restaurant, they're treating Donald Trump 1,000 times better because he has more influence. He can tell more people about it, and he has more money. That's just the reality of it.
Assuming all
understand that
politics
that's the
are set
reality,
aside anyway.
But
Yeah.
we are not in reality. See, this is what I was talking about. We're in WildStar. We're in World of Warcraft, and I think that one of the things that made me really enjoy the game is that I could come in there, some 16-year-old kid, bust my ass, play as hard as I want, and do better than some guy that has the resources of maybe like Donald Trump. I mean, like obviously, as I said, that money always can find a way, but I think that businesses, game developers are treating this so much like a business that there are all of these like, clever microtransactions and, oh, you can buy a horse for $100. Like, I mean, that's really kind of a lot, don't you think?
Oh yeah, set the price whatever you want. Don't buy
Oh
it.
yeah. No, I
So
understand
let
that.
me jump in here and just clarify. Just to clarify Asmongold's point, or ask a question to clarify, I should say. One of the things that we were talking about with WildStar, with convenience options, with Star Wars, and etc., is that oftentimes subscribers have these convenience options. There are, of course, exceptions. Rocket boots and Star Wars you can only buy with the in-game cartel coin currency, but the real money substitute. But if you buy convenience options that bring you closer to a subscriber and you're not a subscriber, is that something you're against?
Well, it's really at the point to where the game developer and the buyer have different goals. And so, an example of this is, I guess, like if you would have, like what I was saying before with them like servicing the people who were subscribers faster, it's in their best interest to not deliver a high quality service. And I think that at that point, of course, they're trying to make money, but at the time that they make money, I think it's kind of unethical. It's really what it comes down to. And I think that it's treating these players like consumers and like customers. And I don't really like to be treated like a consumer or a customer. Games are not successful because they have a clever business model. They're successful because they have a great game. And
Can you have both?
It's very
of
possible to
course,
have both.
on a hypothetical thing, but on all of these games that have like these clever subscription models or business models, like WildStar, no, obviously not. With all of these other games, they're very unsuccessful. I mean, so that's not what's happened. And there have been more and more of these games that have come out, and they've been trying to emphasize microtransactions and making as much money off of people as possible. And while a lot of people might think that's okay, I would rather have a game that everybody's put on the same playing field.
But you play World of Warcraft, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can buy an
$25
endgame.
mounts, $10 mounts, $25 pets.
You can buy an endgame character. So you can buy a character that you just leveled up. So doesn't that counter your own argument?
It's not all the way at the end game. Yeah, it's like level 90 and like it goes up to 100. And I understand what you're saying, and yeah, of course that does make sense. But realistically, I mean, a lot of that stuff is not actually in game. And also on top of that, I've been against that as well. I don't like that either. I've made videos about that. I've made tons of videos about that, and so I don't like the entire thing to begin with.
Okay. So I think that was a good discussion, but in this last bit, we've been talking about subscribers for about 25 minutes now. We've left out one of our people who is not in a subscriber model game, and so Shin, welcome back. In case
Finally, it's time to shine.
So what I want to ask is with the buy to play model, the idea is, okay, you buy the game, you've given them your money. One of the big things with MMOs, with MMORPGs, is you expect future content.
Yeah.
Do you expect future content in Guild Wars 2 to come with the cost of having bought the game? I mean, I know there's a paid expansion coming out, but sans paid expansions, does Guild Wars 2 get content out?
Yeah, here's the thing with the buy to play in Guild Wars 2's case anyway, is when they initially released the game, they wanted you to get the most bang for your buck. They put a ridiculous amount of content in the base game, and initially it was around $60, I believe, for the base game, and they developed their systems and they developed their playable world in a way where they wanted to make sure that you would get your money out of that amount that you purchased, and then that would in turn cause more people to recommend the game. And it would they wanted the game to be quality first, and then they figured they could bank on the good reviews and the increase in purchases through word of mouth to then generate revenue through box sales to have the money to go forward with more content. Of course, that's not how things necessarily work in reality. So they did also put in kind of a backup, the microtransaction shop, but they wanted to make sure that the shop had things people wanted to buy as opposed to things they needed to buy. So like things you can find in the shop are you can get bank slots, you can get character slots, you can get infinite gathering tools, which they don't confer any real bonus. They just allow you to not have to worry about constantly buying more stacks of them from vendors. You can buy costumes, armor, skins, stuff like nothing that really confers power. And at the same time, they also made it so you can pay with any of that stuff with in-game currency, but because of the exchange rate, it's usually more efficient of your time to buy it through real money. But anyway, they set it up in a way where people would want to spend real money on that shop, and through that, they would be able to have the funds to go forward with new content. Do I expect this? This is my opinion. This isn't necessarily what a lot of people think, and I think I might be in the minority with this, but I don't expect more content when I get as much value for my dollar. Or I don't expect future content when I get as much value for my dollar as I got with the original game, but I would hope for that because it is an MMO and they did advertise it as a living, breathing world and that one that would progress and whatnot. So you would hope that if they advertise it as one that will expand and they're claiming it to be an MMO in the genre we currently have with all of the concepts that are wrapped in with that, they would give us future content. So expect no, hope for yes, especially when they advertise it.
All right, and then Delta, you're kind of looking into your future here. Do you want to chime in a bit?
Oh, sure. As far as will it produce content, I mean, you would hope that it does. I mean, I think Star Wars, was one of the earlier things that kind of failed as a submodel, and I played that for years and transitioned into free-to-play, and bang, Galactic Starfighter came out, and it's kind of a living, breathing thing. I don't care for the game anymore, but I know a lot of people do, and they're coming out with expansions, and they've kept coming out with stuff. For my game in particular, it's been on hold basically for a year due to consoles. It just has been. Right. And so I think they have a couple things up their sleeve, and I think they're ready to launch 2 to 3 major things this year. And with that being said, hopefully that brings in a whole lot more revenue, a whole lot more opportunities for the game. I know people are spending big bucks on the crowns. And what they do with that money, hopefully it all doesn't go into Fallout 4. But I would hope that the content kicks up, because it hasn't for a year waiting on consoles.
Yeah. And so kind of, and this is not just a question for the buy-to-play people, but a question for everyone is, why is buy-to-play seemingly underrepresented? I went down a list of the most popular MMOs, which, of course, they're all estimated, because other than WoW, no one brags about how few subscribers they have. But why do you think buy-to-play is so underrepresented? That a lot of times, like, for instance, WildStar and Star Wars went from buy-to-play subscribe to straight to free-to-play, not even buy-to-play. Why do you think that happened? Why do you think buy-to-play is all told so underrepresented?
I think it's a trust thing. I think it's because while you can hope for it, there are people who expect it and they have no guarantee like they would hope would be upheld with a subscription, or they have no control over whether or not there is going to be future content because they're not actively paying that subscription fee. They're not holding, while the company with the subscription is holding them to pay that amount, the customer is also holding that company to produce more content in the future. With buy-to-play, you don't have anything like that. There's no trust, there's no guarantee of that future content. So I think there's a lot of people who don't really go for it for that reason, but I think there's also a lot of companies that are kind of in the same mentality where they're like, we can't guarantee people will keep paying us through other things or whatever. It's a lack of trust, a lack of guarantee, and I think that's what on both sides kind of keeps people from really buying into the whole buy-to-play model.
Yeah, I'd have to agree on that. I was really when I first heard the news of free to play for WildStar, I had a knee jerk reaction of why don't you just go buy to play, and then I thought about it. And I'm like, it would just be worse off in the long run for the game for still have that initial box price hurdle that people want to get over it and people want to play the game, but a lot of them still can't justify it. I don't want to buy something and then have it sit on my shelf or in my box like half my Steam games for the next 5 years and go, oh yeah, I forgot I had WildStar, I forgot I had ESO. And also some people are also very skittish to the fact that buy-to-play games, some of them, and there has been some horror stories, really bad horror stories, worse than free-to-play games, of additional purchases after the box purchase. And they don't want to deal with that.
Well, so one question that I want to ask. So let's just, and I'm pulling numbers out of my ass when I say this. This is an illustrative example, not a hardcore case study. When a game is buy to play, presumably fewer people will play it than when it's free to play. And so let's say for every one person who would buy a game, let's say there are 3 people who would play it if it were free to play. Again, number pulled completely out of my ass, but it's an illustrative example. If the game costs $30 to buy, you then the developer has to think, okay, in order for this to be a worthwhile transaction, those 3 people, we need to find a way to get them to spend $10 on average. And I think we'll get into very quickly how free-to-play games tend to make the vast majority on their money off vastly small numbers of people. But on average, you have to make that cost up or at least be comparable. Otherwise, you would just go buy to play. So does anyone want to kind of chime in on whether I'm just full of shit there, which is a completely viable option, or anything to say?
I think it really depends on the game. Like some games can go buy to play and it's more okay, some can't. And I think really what the buy to play is, like why people might not really want to go into that, is because there isn't really a guarantee, like what you were saying, on either side. So, consumers don't really have a guarantee that, there will still be content support and everything like that. And also developers don't really have a constant income stream that they would have with like a microtransaction shop or a subscription model. They kind of just have to expect people to buy the game and take that money and use it for more development, and so that can be kind of hard for them to do.
Anyone else want to? Well, so let's contrast that with what WoW does, which is you can level to 20 for free, the starter edition, I believe, to experience the game, and then you can buy. Why does it seem not many games do that? Star Wars: The Old Republic, like I said, they didn't go to a trial version. I think they may have had a trial version briefly, but I'm not sure. I know WildStar you can right now try for 10 days. And I think it's pretty much unlimited other than chat because they don't want gold farmers.
Exactly.
But my question is, like, why aren't we seeing more an emphasis on trials with buy-to-play and just going straight to free-to-play? Why do we feel developers are kind of negating that as a viable option?
Because you have the people who will try it and then not buy it because they don't like it. Whereas if you don't have that trial option there, you have to rely on word of mouth. And in a lot of cases, with a lot of games, I'm not saying all of them, but with a fair number, there's positive word of mouth, and friends will get their friends to, or people will get their friends to join in, and those friends do have to buy in. I guess it helps guarantee the purchase a bit more, because if you have a trial first and then it's purchase, and then people see, say, the cost of the box or whatever, they're like, I don't really feel it's worth the money. I think WoW can do it because they have the reputation, they have the subscriber, they have the base subscription that recoups any losses that would be caused by that method. So they're safer. They can do that type of stuff. Whereas games like Guild Wars 2, it's very different and it's not exactly everyone's cup of tea. So they can't have that trial there necessarily, except for very, very, very specific events.
Right, like a trial weekend. I've done trial weekend with Guild Wars 2.
Yeah, they've only done I think 3 or 4 of those ever. Yeah. So
and I ended up not liking and not buying it. So I guess maybe I'm answering my own question there, but
yeah, it's just riskier on the company's part if they're only doing it as buy to play.
But if they're doing free to play though and people don't like it, it seems likely it's not like those people are then going to still go on the free-to-play market and spend money there.
Well,
I think part of it has to deal with the developers going, oh, now we have to find a way to fit these guys into the current player base. A lot of the times with these trials is they're not what's it called? They don't like recycle and respawn. Like, wow, it's unlimited level 20. You can keep playing to level 20, keep playing to level 20, roll and alt, roll and alt, roll and alt. Now you have 12 alts. Oh, might as well just buy the game now. Other games like the Secret World has a 3-day buddy pass. WildStar has 10 days. It doesn't really work once they transition to free to play because it'll be out of sight, out of mind. Once those 10 days are over, once those 3 days are over, I had to buy the box. I don't see enough of it anyways. With WoW, it kind of feels like the old school demo disc days, where you just pop in that demo disc and just keep going and keep going and keep going. And the more you can replay it, the more willing you are to just finally drop the money and get the game. With all the other buy to play games or all the other free to play games or subscription games that are trying these passes, they're restricted to time, and that ultimately ends up leaving a bad taste in a lot of players' mouths that really wanted a bit more hands-on time to really make their decision. I think if they were able to do something like WoW and say, yeah, level 20, unlimited for every time, as long as you have a name and a password, you can keep playing. Can't get past this level, though. People will just keep going.
Not time gating, but content gating.
Exactly.
So why didn't WildStar try to do that?
I don't know why. I think they should have. I
totally
think they should have.
Speculate, of course. Okay.
My thought is I don't even have a thought. I don't even agree with the fact that it's 10 days. It's a dumb idea, in my opinion.
Okay.
I don't even have a reason for it. It seems unnecessary. It really does to have a gate on that, like a 3-day gate period, 10-day gate period. Because I remember myself, when I didn't have the income, I'm like, 10 days, awesome. 10th day is over. Well, my wallet says 0, so sorry guys, delete.
Anyone else want to chime in on content gating versus time gating?
I think I should try and emphasize is that getting level 20 in WoW takes maybe a couple of hours, and so it's not like you get to really experience any real form of the actual game. You can't really interact with other players, and so they do that to prevent like gold sellers making those accounts and spamming actual people. And so there are a lot of other things that you really can't do with that I guess like level 20 like starter edition. And so I don't really want people to think that, just because they have that there is some sort of real free to play. It's just a test to see how you like it. And I think it's good, but, at the same time, it's not really a whole lot of content, honestly. It's very, very minimal. I would say maybe a couple of hours.
I think mainly the thing I was trying to kind of get at there was, so why aren't more games trying that? I mean, I would say Star Wars The Old Republic is actually very close to that model with WoW, except instead of level 20, it's level 50. But, you still can't do any endgame content without paying some money right now. Because right now the level cap is 60, it's raising to 65 this fall, and free-to-play, unless you spend something, can still only go to 50. But, yeah, I guess we've kind of milked that well dry, mixing my metaphors there, but kind of moving into, so how does free to play affect the community? Maybe some of us will be proud of admitting this, maybe some of us won't, but oftentimes free to players are looked down upon as serfs or plebeians in their particular community, and I think this leads to a lot of toxicity, but does anyone want to kind of comment on the social dynamics that emerge there?
I think that whenever people aren't involved with the game, if you pay money to it, you have a greater degree of involvement. And so if you're playing with somebody who's maybe subscribing to the game, there's a higher probability that they're just not going to ditch out on you. And I mean, really, I don't really play a free-to-play game, but that seems like it would be a possibility. And I've been playing Heroes of the Storm, which is like a MOBA, and you see that a lot more with people who are not really that involved with the game. They don't have a lot of the different champions, and they just don't really care, And so I think that really what it comes down to is that, actually subscribing or having, a lot of these microtransaction items indicates some degree of dedication. And so other players want to play with people who are dedicated so they aren't let down themselves.
So there's some... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that any Joe Schmo can start playing the game, and when you have, going based off what you were saying, where you have people who aren't as invested in the game, when someone is less invested in something, they worry less about the consequences of their actions, so you have a lot of trolling, a lot of just douchebaggery that can happen, and
Yeah.
as a result, people will hear about that. People remember and talk about the negative experiences they have in anything in life more than the positive. So you'll have
Right.
all these people who will talk about, oh, this guy kill stealing my stuff, and oh, this community has a bunch of just trolls and unpleasant people, blah 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 blah. And when you hear that from a lot of free to play game communities and a lot of reactions to those games, it just creates this overall stigma of people who play free to play games are nothing but trolls and scumbags and filth and blah 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 blah. And I think it's just the history of what has happened with free to play games, and just I think it's just accumulation of word of mouth and reactions, and that whole lack of regard for consequences.
Well, I think I mean, anytime you have a population, you're going to get a dingberry. You're going to get an idiot on one end of it. You're going to get a really nice person on the other end of it. If you open the floodgates to 10,000, 10 million more people, well, you're going to get 10,000 more dumbasses. You are.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of it. And like I think to the original person's point, they're not invested in the game that maybe I am, where I play every day. I have a website dedicated to it. So for them, they can say, F you, you're a jackass, and there's no repercussion because they'll just ditch the game. So it's twofold. There's jackasses everywhere. You know, I might be that guy. I am that guy probably. But you're allowing more people in there. And it's a stigma. I mean, you know, people call them freeloaders and stuff like that. Well, if you make your game free to play, that's what it is, right? I mean, so you can't
They're
really get
not
mad at people.
freeloading. Yeah.
Right.
It's like if you give something out for free and then somebody takes it, it's like you're not really freeloading because they're
Yeah,
giving it to you.
Yeah, so I don't have any problem with it, but
But at the same time, you would agree that while a rational thinking human acknowledges, hey, it's free, like, there's no reason to judge this person for minimizing costs. At the same time, we are tribalistic apes that climbed out of trees only a couple 100,000 years ago, and so we still see, I think, often this formation of tribes where, oh, well, I'm in the pay money tribe, and we're upstanding moral people who really watch each other's back, and it's all those people on that other side of the canyon are the evil ones, and
well.
Do you think that
It's
might
just
just be...
it's just stereotypes, really. Like I think in a lot of games, Brazilians and Russians have a very, very bad stereotype, and in other games they don't. And it really just depends on the culture of the game. Like in WoW, people who do the PvP aspect of the game are generally regarded as being a lot more, I guess, like maybe childish or rude or something like that. And that happens all the time. I think it does have to do with like the tribal aspect, but also like if somebody has like an experience, like they play with like 3 PvPers, let's say, or 3 free-to-play people, and all 3 of them are dickheads, well then, I mean, they're going to probably assume that almost all of theirs are dickheads. You know, it's just what they're going to assume. And I mean, some people are more like, stuck in that way, and other people aren't. Like for me personally, there are certain types of people that, if I know this and that, and, a couple other things about them, I can pretty well assume that they're going to be, not very fun to play with. And so, I mean, I think that it's also like not always tribalism. It's also learning from experience. And it's like, I do recruitment for a raiding guild. And so if I see somebody who has had a lot of trouble with previous guilds, I try not to really bring that person in, because there's a probability, that's higher than average that this person will have problems and create problems for our guild. And while might not necessarily be fair to that person, it's fair to my guild, who are the people who put me in charge to make those decisions.
And if I may quote one of my favorite quotes from the show Justified, it's Raylan Givens says, if you wake up in the morning and you meet an asshole, you just met an asshole. If you wake up in the morning and everyone you meet's an asshole, you're the asshole.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, if you go from different guilds, or like, and I don't want to get off too much into this tangent, but if you go into different guilds and like you're the common denominator of all of these things, and the same thing happens every time,
guess what?
Maybe it's you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's you.
I think this would be a great, almost full episode just talking about guild dynamics, but we're approaching an hour 20 minutes, and I told you guys it would be about an hour and a half. I don't want to...
I could go all night. That's just me, though.
But I'm going to just kind of jump on to the next topic, and now I'm going to ask everyone to put on their little Nostradamus hat, and let's make some completely warrantless speculative predictions.
My specialty.
Good.
Yeah, so one question is, is the subscription model dying, or is it just an artifact of there's one extremely popular subscription game that will remain unnamed, I'm sure, and it's just eating up all the players that are willing to subscribe? Or is it just an artifact of gaming changing and the subscription model is really no longer viable? Your thoughts?
I'm going to say I'm from a bygone era, like a lot of us are, possibly, and I'm so used to paying subscription base that I'm sad to see it go, because I feel like maybe my rose-colored glasses are telling me sub is the better way to go for X, Y, and Z reasons. I have also have to
give one of those reasons. Name it very explicitly.
EverQuest, before I started going into all of its different breakdowns and everything else, it was like you paid your month and you got everything. There was consistent scheduling and everything else. Same with WildStar. You keep paying your $15 up until their announcement transition. It was, hey, every 3 months you've got like a fourth or a fifth of an expansion pack coming out in every 3 months. Well,
although in fairness, it originally was 1 month.
Oh, that was so ambitious. It was ridiculous. We all realized how ridiculous that was.
Of course, I agree too.
But I honestly think that for good and for bad, the subscription mode is dying because, well, one, we can go anywhere we want nowadays. Steam, our phones, our any device we choose, we have so many options for games that it just telling someone to force and lock them in like your cable bill doesn't make any sense now, because if you talk about, like, if I want to do cable as an analogy, I got HBO Go on my phone right now. I've got my computer right here. I can go on any stream site I want to illegally and do it. Or I can go to Sling TV and only pick like 20 channels for a month. Right. I think the subscription model, as much as I like it personally, I'm okay with it shrinking down to a bare minimum of games or just going away completely, because developers are starting to show that for the most part, your fears and what you've experienced in the past are mostly being taken care of, because a lot of them came from that time as well. Like, we don't want this crap to happen again, so if we're going to make you go buy to play or free to play, we want to make sure that you're taken care of, because we're with 10 to 1, we're playing in the same game at the same general time in the same area you are, and we want our experience to be as well as your experience.
Okay. Anyone else on that question?
I like the subscription model a lot more. It's like, I remember, man, like, I'll be real, when I was 16, I started playing WoW, and I went into that game, and, I was just basically some loser kid, just like basically anybody else who's 16, and, like, I knew that, I had a flat, playing field, a level playing field with every single other person, and so being successful in that game, was a product of my own effort and my own, tenacity and work, and it wasn't a product of myself buying things off of the store or anything like that. I really like that you have this one thing that you pay for, and you were put on this playing field with everybody else who is exactly the same, and just have at it. And that's why I really like the subscription model, but I can understand why less games are doing it for no other reason than it's harder to create more customers.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, I think it's cyclical. I think we're seeing, it's a business, just like trends and everything else. It'll come back to subscription. It's cyclical. They're trying a new thing. People are being profitable off it, so they're going to use it until it's not profitable anymore. I don't think it has anything to do with World of Warcraft. I honestly don't. The game's popular, but there's so many other games out there that, people play because they like the game, but I think ultimately it's they like the people. Once you get into community,
right.
Generally the game could screw up. You're not going to leave because you want to hang out with Tom and Billy and Tommy and whatever. It's the people and the environment that attracts me and keeps me in the games.
Yeah, and I see that a lot in online discussions. I'll see every now and then some post that says, "Man, I would leave this game, but all my friends are in it." But on that note, then, I mean, we're paying for the social experience. We're also, though, when you talk about a subscription, you're paying for future content as well. I mean, is that a reasonable assumption to make, or am I just being?
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable assumption.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then when free-to-play comes, a common fear is, okay, well, what's going to happen to content? And it's slowed down, I would say, notably in Star Wars The Old Republic once it went free-to-play. There's been fewer operations, and there's been more development time spent on strongholds, which are effectively Barbie houses that you decorate with things. Of course, strongholds and housing are just free-to-play gold mines, because they sell you furniture, they sell you improvements, they sell you new, bigger Barbie houses. You can buy a balcony extension. Like, I mean, does anyone have a thought on that, or?
I wish
mhm.
that gives me like PTSD of what's going on in WoW right now. Like there are so many things that just are really. It seems like I don't know. Like they're adding like it's called a garrison. Basically,
Right.
it's the same thing. It's called a garrison, and they do the exact same thing. I absolutely hate it. So
Yeah, and
So
I
People
went.
love it. People
was-
love it. That's why they do it.
Yeah.
That's
So I'm actually going to go and say I enjoy the housing in WildStar because it's not just a simple Barbie doll thing. Yeah, you can turn it into a death ring or a fashion runway or an RP whodunit murder mystery train, but there are expeditions you can only find in housing in WildStar. There's challenge and mini games that will net you rewards or other housing icons in
I
there.
don't want to get too much into housing,
Yeah.
which is why and we're just short on time, is why I'm cutting you off. I just use that as an example of the housing in WildStar is often based on progression, but the housing in Star Wars: The Old Republic, there are progression elements, but when you kill like a raid boss, you might get one decoration that everyone has to roll on, but everyone gets a picture to put on the wall. Whereas if you go to the cartel market, you can buy all these really cool decoration packs. And I'm worried that, like specifically in WildStar, that it's going to go that way. It's going to be, the housing is going to become so hardcore microtransaction based that it's going to lose a lot of what makes it amazing, I think, which is the creativity of limited decorations that you have to find and make.
I'm definitely concerned about that, especially because I know this is, for everyone else who's living it right now, I'm in a community that's in pure speculation mode. It's like if they're talking about extra content that might be paid, they're talking about extra actual expansion packs that might be made, or they're talking about whatever's going to show up in the cash shop. If that starts taking away from keeping the game running smoothly or developing content that everyone should be getting rightful access to because they promised us, I've got a major issue with that, and that would actually cause me to really drop out as a community member in my game. It's a weird thing I'm in right now, at least in my game, where with the community I'm talking to and the people I try to talk to that aren't in my immediate community, there's a sense of cautious optimism in the sense that, okay, we feel for the most part we're being handed a fair deal in our transition, but you've not talked to us a bit about how you're going to nickel and dime us, for lack of a better, well, I don't even lack for how you're actually nickel and dime us, and that can cause a lot of existing players to go, wait up, I'm fair. I thought that was fair on everything but here. That's going to cause a major row.
Right.
So we won't know until it actually happens, though.
Whatever you end up nickel and diming monetizing, it's going to piss off at least one person.
Very true.
The question is, what percentage of your community are you going to piss off enough that they leave? I think is something they have to consider. Any last thoughts on that before I kind of transition towards the winding down phase?
Well,
I think that they're. Go ahead.
I was going to say my biggest problem with the games right now is that we as players are dictated, what the model is, and it seems like we have no choice anymore. There's pretty much always going to be some pay to win aspect to our games, and it's like, well, why would I quit Elder Scrolls over XP potions? Every other game has them. Every other game has some type of pay to win, some way to enhance your character with money. That's how I look at it. And while it's a business and I'm the biggest proponent of that, it feels like something is lost in gaming in this era.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like the last 5 years, think about how many garbage games have come out because people pre-ordered them. Words of Draenor, the
last
recent
5
WoW
years, last
expansion.
5 months.
So what you're all saying is we should just keep coming back every 2 weeks and just talking more and more about games, because I'm down.
I mean, there's a lot to be said. There really is. I think that the more that gaming becomes a bigger industry, the more the goal becomes about profit rather than creating a good gaming experience. And of course, they can both happen, but it seems like they're focusing a lot more on profit than the good gaming experience.
Right. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to kind of move to the last segment, and I'm going to skip over a bit. So I'm just going to go down the list, and I want everyone to make a completely unnecessary speculation about where they see their game. Let's say MMOs now are rising and dying quickly, other than WoW. So let's say 3 years from now. I'll go last, just because it'll let me lead into the outro quickly. So anyone want to jump in first?
I can go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think ESO is going to be an absolute juggernaut for years to come because of consoles. If the game, when it first came out, didn't know if it was MMO, didn't know if it was Skyrim Online, and now it has a feel for both. And playing it on the console, I don't prefer consoles whatsoever, but it's going to feed the PC version of the game. And I think it's going to be a mainstay for years and years to come. And so the future looks bright. The transition isn't perfect, but I wish the game well, and I really like the developers, and I can't wait to continue playing it.
And we should also note that ESO has a market that none of our other games can tap, which is the traditional console gamer. And I may end up having to just do a whole segment on, is that a viable group to target for MMORPGs? But moving on, let's Asmongold.
Oh man, it could go any way. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen. BlizzCon happens every year, which is whenever they announce a lot of the new stuff. In 3 years, the new expansion will be out. And this one hasn't really been out for that long. Honestly, it could go more free to play. I think that Blizzard recently did a Q&A session talking to the players, and they talked a lot about they sympathized with the players a lot on what their concerns were. And so I think that we can see a little bit more of a return to form. But again, it's just all speculation, and I can't really be certain. There have been so many things that I thought that this expansion was going to be much different than it was. And so at this point, it's hard to really know what's going to happen because things just are happening semi-randomly.
Right. And there's always a random element in anything. Anyone who says that I worked hard and I got where I am completely by myself, I don't think appreciates how much
They're
the
full of
universe...
it.
I don't
Everybody
think they
gets
appreciate
lucky.
how much the universe screws over people for no fucking reason.
Everybody gets lucky.
Yeah. All right, Deltia, you want to jump in?
Oh, I already went on ESO. So I'm good.
Sorry, Doc, you jump in. 3 years from now.
Sure. 3 years from now, obviously we're going optimistic, everything. 3 years from now, I'm going to go two ways. I want every other game that we're talking about in this panel to fucking succeed, excuse my language. Because when they're good, my game gets better. And that's me being so I want the game to do well. I want the game to have more content in it. It's got a solid enough base and a unique enough flavor from the rest of them that I do believe that within 3 years it can become one of the best competitors and top competitors in the genre.
And for the note, I don't give a shit what fucking language you use.
God damn it, motherfucking! I wish I had known that fucking.
All right, and then Shin, you want to jump in and tell us where you see Guild Wars 2? Obviously, huge expansion coming out could add some uncertainty.
I am very optimistic. Despite all of the pre-purchase stuff, you have people saying, "Oh, they haven't told us all the info." Blah 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 blah. Don't pre-order. It blew up on Reddit. Despite that, I've seen enough to warrant pre-purchasing and whatnot. But I am very optimistic for how the game's future looks. I think in 3 years we will probably be on the cusp of another expansion. Because what they're doing with the current one is they're laying a lot of foundation, a lot of baseline system changes. It's more feature intensive than it is necessarily content intensive, which that little bit has a lot of people's goats. But I'm very optimistic for the outcome of the game, so long as they tread the line of the whole only cosmetic inconvenience in their microtransaction shop, and they don't pull anything shady. I trust them not to do that, but anything can happen. As long as they keep innovating, as long as they keep doing things differently and offer that unique take on how an MMO should be looked at, and they don't break a lot of their promises of keeping it about horizontal progression and things like that, I think Guild Wars 2 will still be very healthy in the future. It will be up there with the best. I mean, it's already kind of been that way over the past few years, but I honestly only see it getting stronger if they continue on the current track.
Okay, and so that leaves me and Star Wars: The Old Republic. So everyone's been all optimistic. Here goes a change of key. I think Star Wars: The Old Republic has a lot of problems right now, and very fundamental problems that they need to work out. One of which is consistent content droughts. When 2.0 launched last April, we then got one new operation and one operation scaled up. We got 2 more in October. So we effectively had 4 current tier raids, 3 of which were new. And that was good. And 14 months later, nothing endgame had come out since. We got one PvP Warzone map in that whole time. And other than that, we got flashpoints, which were dungeons, but they were designed to be easy and class agnostic. So you didn't even need a tank or healer. So they weren't it wasn't satisfying content. 3.0 comes out, And they spend so much of the first half of the year fixing the broken-ass nature of that release that it put a bad taste in people's mouths. And, now we hear about an expansion. We've heard nothing about endgame content other than level caps increasing. And I think with subscription games, you really need to create a sense of here's what's coming up. And Star Wars The Old Republic, I think, has failed to do that other than, say, we're getting story content, which, not a huge endgame draw, but some people like it. Actually, a lot of people like it. But can you make your bread and butter off story content? And I would say no. I would say that these little short episodes like we saw with Ziost recently with The Old Republic show that it mostly, you get through it in an afternoon and then you think, okay, now what am I spending the remaining $14.50 of my 50 cents a day on this game for? This expansion can go either way. It could either be a reimagining of the game and a rebuilding of the game, or it could be the beginning of the end. And I don't know which way it's going to go, but given the development cycles that we've seen lately, I unfortunately think this will be the beginning of the end for Star Wars The Old Republic. I hope I'm wrong. I really do, because I love it. And I think if they're going to do it, this is the year to do it, because everyone knows Star Wars Episode 7's coming out. And, that's going to build more hype than anything else possibly can. But I do think it could very well be the beginning of the end for the game. I know that I don't play it nearly as much as I used to, so... with that, I'm going to just go down the line again, let everyone kind of plug their website. I'm Death by Smiley. I'm a guide writer for Star Wars The Old Republic. Find me on YouTube at Godless and Gaming. There you'll find guides for current tier Star Wars The Old Republic Operation Story Mode and Hard Mode. Asmongold?
My name is Asmongold. I make World of Warcraft guides, and you can look me up on YouTube and also on Twitter or Facebook or basically any of those.
Hey, Deltia?
I am Deltia from DeltiaSgaming.com, ESO fanboy for life. I am partner Twitch streamer, stream every day, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m., twitch.tv, DeltiaSgaming. Do guides on my website, DeltiaSgaming.com, and I have almost a video a day on YouTube/DeltiaSgaming.
All right, Shin?
I'm Shinryuku, just Shin for short to keep it easy. I'm primarily a Twitch streamer. You can find me at twitch.tv/Shinryuku_ku. I also have a YouTube that is basically that name minus the _ku at the end. I put a lot of just kind of everything content on there. I have a lot of stream highlights on there as well. I don't put up content every day because I have a full-time job, but I try and stream most days of the week. And you can also find me on Twitter, same thing, Shinryuku without the _ku in the end.
And then last, not least, and certainly the best bearded, although it's close between you and Asmongold, Doc?
We'll have to have that beard off coming. My name is Doc. You can find me on Twitter at DocQT. I am a podcaster ne'er do well with Strange Tales from Outer Space. We do a live Twitch show every Sunday night at 5 p.m. Pacific Time at twitch.tv/QTimes, QUEUETIMES. You can find me in game or probably any of these other games under the name Doc, so I'll see you guys around in game.
All right, and that kind of brings me to talking about the next podcast, which I don't have a firm date for, but if you're interested, email pvepodcast@gmail.com. It's going to be on leveling and grinding, whether or not some aspects of that are outdated, and how to best make that content fun in gaming when naturally it can be monotonous. This has been the PvE Podcast, the inaugural episode. Thanks for listening, guys, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Seriously, this was fun.
Had a good time.